Italia, a celebration of the great wines of Italy. This is our fourth and final installment of a series of virtual tastings and interviews leading up to the great auction tonight, which will start at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We have over 400 lots of the finest and rarest wines from Italy, including 5 consignments direct from some of Italy's finest domains: Bruno Giacosa, Quintarelli, Grechetto, Solaya, and of course, the grand finale from Antinori. And my name is John Capon, and it is with great pleasure that I welcome Miss Lily Mirabel Friedman, my co-host for the virtual tastings. And how are you, Lily?
I'm not too bad. We've gotten through a whole week of them, so it's very exciting.
Busy week. It's been a busy week, and we're got to end it on a high note. Very excited to introduce our guest today, the 26th generation of her family, 6 centuries in Italy. This woman grew up in Florence and has participated in 25 harvests in Tuscany and Bulgari. Naturally drawn to winemaking, she pursued a degree in enology in Milan and worked as a winemaker for the company. She serves as the family's representative on the Primum Familiae Vini. Hope I said that right. It's about 12 or 15 of the top domains in Europe, including Vega Sicilia, Mouton Rothschild, Joseph Drouin, Paul Roger, others. A great organization that we've been proud to support in the past. And she's an art lover and a wine lover, to be certain. It is my great pleasure to welcome to you the Vice President of Marchesi Antinori, Alessia Antinori. Welcome, Alessia.
Good evening. Good morning. Sorry, here it's almost evening. So in Italy, back in Italy. But good morning, John and Lily. It's a pleasure to be with you today and to all of you that are participating.
And where are you coming to us from? Are you in Tuscany right now?
Unfortunately not, but I'm in Rome because I live in Rome in this moment since a few years. And but close to Florence, I go back and forth. So it's not a bad trip to do every week.
Is that you can drive between Rome and Florence? Is it a close enough drive, or you have to hop on the train or fly?
You can drive, but the train is more comfortable. And then from there, when you arrive to Florence, you go to the Chianti Classico, which is half an hour where we have our winery. And so, you know, it's a beautiful trip, I would say, and nothing to say about that.
Yeah, no, I've been to Florence a couple of times. One of my favorite cities in Europe. How are things in Italy? Are things still kind of relatively locked down compared? I know we're starting to open up in the U.S. a little bit, and everybody's getting vaccinated and stuff. What's going on in Italy?
So we are slower than you Americans in the sense that for vaccinations, they are starting now to be vaccinating the 50 years old people. So they went from 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, and now they're starting the 50s. So let's hope for myself, maybe in a few weeks. And so we will get, they say, probably the 70% of the population by September, October, which is quite good. And the most important part of the population, obviously, by June, July. So that is good. At least it's better than nothing, I would say. And for what regards the lockdown, we are getting out the lockdown. We have the curfew still, but only until 10 o'clock. I think will be postponed to 11 p.m. next week. And slowly we're getting it. I think by June, when we hope that many Americans also will come to visit us again, we will be out of it and safe.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. I think this summer it's going to start, and hopefully by truffle season, it'll be all systems go. That's when all the Americans I know love to come.
I really hope so. Finger crossed.
Yeah. So let's talk about Antinori. Your father, Marchese Piero, has played an integral role in building the brand, but also mentoring numerous producers and being a leader for the entire region. What was it like growing up as an Antinori in such a wine-loving family?
I have to say, it's an amazing experience, obviously, but also a huge responsibility. because our winery goes back, as you mentioned, many centuries. I'm part with my other two sisters of the 26th generation. We have the 27th generation on board, which we are very happy about. And so this is a huge responsibility, because I always say that it took us a long, long time to build all this, but it takes a few minutes to destroy it. So we believe that the sense of responsibility obviously is, it's heavy in a way, but it's also very challenging to look what has been done in the past and to look ahead to the future and to the present, obviously. My personal experience being looking after also the winemaking aspects, which, you know, in Italy is always quite, especially in the past, has been also looked a little bit in an awkward way, because women involved in the winemaking and the agricultural aspects, like in viticulture, obviously, wasn't really seen well. And this especially 10, 20 years ago. Now things have changed. But when I started to work, obviously, and especially when I went to university, it was certainly very challenging. So we are three sisters involved in the wine business, so it's quite rare. Nowadays it's more normal, but when we started many years ago, it was quite rare and absolutely very, very challenging. And I think that this is, you know, it's something that we will transmit also to the future generations, because we believe that it's that huge responsibility that we have is a very important value to transmit also.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing winery. You know, I still, for many years, I've bought even just the regular Chianti Classico Reserva. You know, we deal in fine and rare wine and some of the great wines of the world, and obviously the Solayas and the Tignanellos and the Guado al Tassos, you know, the wines that make it to auction. But personally, I've always drank that wine over the years. If I'm somewhere, you know, need a quick bottle, or sometimes you're at a restaurant, it's a good, you know, and it's always a great wine. And from every level, you know, of wine that you make is quality. And that's what I love. You know, sometimes it's more exciting to have the $20 or $30 wine that's great, and you're like, wow, this is so delicious, as much as it is the $300 or the $1,000 bottle.
For us, it's very important in all our wines to really, we are looking for consistency in quality, obviously the quality in all our wines, from our entry-level wine to our more important wines. And this is something that distinguished a lot our company, because there wasn't really in the family values to maintain that quality, and also in certain difficult vintages don't produce the wines, and this really made a difference. And probably we are also respected nowadays in the last years also for this reason, because we decided, being a family, we could make this decision. We could take this decision to, in certain vintages, to don't produce certain wines, or a good part of the production of wines. And we also believe that, you know, our entry-level wines, as probably Santa Cristina, also Villa Antinori, they are very important for us. Has been always wines that that, you know, 40, 50, 60 years ago we were producing. If you think about Villa Antinori, is a wine with the same, more or less the same label since the 1920s for the red and the white, which, you know, and it's distributed in 180 countries in the world. So it's probably, you know, quite known. And we believe that obviously the most important part is to be known in Italy, because we come from Italy, from Florence, from Tuscany, but also to have, to give the opportunity all over the world to be tasted as wines. So the Villa Antinori probably is the most, I would say, the most known, with a very interesting value per money, quality per value, value per quality, sorry, a wine. So that's very important.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Antinori has been a pioneer for the entire region, and a leader and the wine, and a name that everybody can trust all over the world. And that's super important. So speaking of growing up at Antinori, so you and your two sisters, are you guys close in age, or what's the age range? And did you all, when you were growing up, did you all want to go into the business, or was there one, did you want to do something else, or how was it?
My sister Alessia is the eldest. She is 9 years older than me. She really didn't have many other opportunities or chances to decide, because when my father, when she was 18 years old, my father in that moment was a really important moment. It was the the 80s, and he really needed support all over the world, also promoting the wines. So she entered immediately in the company. Allegra, my mid-sister, also almost immediately when she became, she was 18, 19 years old. And maybe myself, and she is 4 years younger than my sister. So it's like the difference is 9 years with my eldest sister and 5 years with my mid-sister, Allegra. And then myself, I had the opportunity to go to university because I really wanted to specialize in viticulture and winemaking. And so that was, we decided since the beginning to look after different sector and aspects of the company. And Albiera now is the president of our company, and Allegra and myself, we are vice presidents. And we all take care of more or less of different aspects of the company, even if obviously always the most important part is the obsession for quality in all our wines, as we said before. And also the, I would say, the communication and the aspects of sales and promoting our wines all over the world. So we travel a lot, and for us, I think more and more throughout the last years, but even in the future ones, it will be very important, the relation that we have with our clients and also our final clients, because in the wine world, and especially after this period of COVID, and I think it's very important the emotional part of transmitting what we believe in and what I've been very lucky to live in our experience.
Are you still involved in the winemaking process, or do you? I mean, you obviously have a team of winemakers for different wines, I would imagine, but are you still involved in that a little bit, or
yes,
you can't help yourself, right?
It's my favorite part, absolutely. And I've my experience since the beginning came from the earth and the vineyard and also the cellar. Since I wanted to, it's a family company, I thought it was very important to understand different aspects of the company. For that reason, I've lived in Asia for 4 years, and I looked after the sales and marketing of Middle East, Asia, and Australia more than 15 years ago. And then I came to the US and I looked after the US. So this aspect for our company, but also for myself, I thought it was extremely important. Nowadays, I'm looking after I would say in the technical part, after many experiences in a few of our wineries, from our sparkling wines in Franciacorta to obviously Castello della Sala and Guado al Tasso and even Tignanello throughout the years. But I'm taking care of a small winery that we own in Rome. So, it's a very small winery, very boutique, but for that reason, there's the direct contact with the vineyards, which I love, I have to say.
Nice, very nice. Well, speaking of which, let's get into some wines. So Lily, why don't you set the table for the first wine here?
So we're starting with the 2019 Cervaro della Sala, and it's a white wine, and we've had the privilege of tasting, I guess this is our third Italian white wine, and this wine's from Umbria. Which is pretty exciting. We don't talk a lot about Italian white wines, or enough about Italian white wines in America, I think. So the first vintage of this was produced in 1985, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But it was one of the first Italian white wines to undergo malolactic fermentation. So what can you tell us a little bit about the history of this white wine? And
before we go into the Cervaro, I'll tell you something that is very important for us when we produce our wines, what we are looking in our wines too when we produce them. So Antinori is known for obviously the history, the tradition, but also the innovation. And the innovation is an extremely important aspect for our family. And the Cervaro, for example, is one of the examples of innovation. In fact, as you mentioned, the first vintage was 1985. This wine comes from a property called Castello della Sala, which is a beautiful property in Umbria. Or who doesn't know, Umbria is the region south of Tuscany between Florence and Rome, more or less. And my grandfather bought this property between the First and the Second World War because at the time he was producing in the Chianti Classico high quality red wines, but he really wanted to produce also white wines. And the most regarded area at the time was the Orvieto area to produce high acidity with character, fresh white wines. So he bought this beautiful property, which is in the property, there's a castle of the 1300s, surrounded by more than 200 hectares of vineyard. And he started to produce white wines. And then when my father came along in the late 1960s, he started to experiment, because for us, innovation means experimentation. And he experimented with a variety that wasn't known at all in the area, which was the Chardonnay. So this is really, Chervaro is one of the examples of our family wines, because it's a blend of Chardonnay, that was totally, as I said, unknown in the area, with Grechetto. Grechetto is an indigenous grape variety from the Umbria, the Orvieto area. And he started to blend Chardonnay with Grechetto. So it depends on the vintages, but it's more or less 75, 80% of Chardonnay, and the rest is Grechetto. And this gives, the result is quite unique, because the Chardonnay, international grape varieties, very well known, obviously, worldwide, gives the structure to the wine. The Grechetto gives the acidity to wine. And the combination of the two make a wine that is unique and certainly not expected from the central part of Italy. So in 1985, when this wine was produced, it was very extremely innovative. We used for the first time barrel and obviously malolactic fermentation, but barrels weren't used at all in the area of in Umbria, and for white wines. And so we decided also to use, as I said, Chardonnay. So very innovative, and since the beginning, also in blind tastings, it was compared immediately to white wines from Burgundy. It's a wine that can age extremely well. We have experience of 20, 25 years of great vintages of Cervaro della Sala. And the interesting thing is that in Italy, when you think about Italian wines, you think mostly about red wines. And there are some interesting white wines, but there are not many. And so I think also when it's very nice that you have tasted it, you proposed it today, because really one is surprised about what the Cervaro and what white wines can show from Italy.
This is absolutely delicious. I mean, this just drinks like, I could see this just drinks so easily, has the light toast, has the elegance, has style. And I like that little, like you said, that little extra that the Grechetto gives is amazing. I mean, this is a fantastic wine, just absolutely delicious. And I like to hear that it can age 20 or 25 years, because a lot of the collectors that we deal with, that's what they like. They like that, you know, a little bit of age. But I feel like I don't feel any problem drinking this right now either.
No, absolutely. All our wines, when we release them on the market, they're ready to drink. I always say that the best is to buy at least a few bottles of each vintage, because at least you can taste it immediately, and then after a few years, and then after 10, 20 years. So it's very important, because obviously these wines will have an evolution and they will change. But when if you immediately you taste them and you open the bottle, if we release them, we believe that they're ready to be drunk.
And now, now does Umbria have its own unique kind of vintage chart, so to speak, compared, or is it kind of similar to Tuscany with the quality of vintages? And how is 2019 in general, which is coming to the market right now for a lot of consumers, or soon to be coming?
It was a good vintage. Obviously, Umbria produces mostly, except the Sagrantino, which is a different, it's a red grape variety, but if not, mostly white wines. And so the harvest starts much earlier. So the risk sometimes is that it starts earlier and then, it's maybe very warm. So it depends. 19 was a good vintage, absolutely a good vintage. And we are very happy about the 19. 2020 has been a little bit more challenging for the Castello della Sala area. But 2019 has been a very, very good vintage. And I think it's ready also to be drunk. It has, it ages 6 months in new oak. And we believe that this equilibrium with the oak is very important. Because we don't want that it's, felt too much, but we want to equilibrate it. So the Grechetto gives that acidity that balances very well the Chardonnay.
Fantastic wine. I'm very impressed. How many cases of this wine do you make usually on average?
In cases is 25,000 cases.
Wow.
30,000 cases.
That's a serious number. That's an amazing. I make a wine this good and that kind of number. That's impressive. Wow. Well, congratulations. And speaking on the family, the legacy begins in like 1385. So the Antinoris were hanging out with Da Vinci and such maybe way back when, but Giovanni di Piero Antinori became a member of the Florentine Winemakers Guild. So this tradition of making wine goes back to the beginning. So was it really from the beginning that from the 14th century that you guys were making wines?
No. In reality, our family entered, as you mentioned, the wine guild in 1385 with Giovanni di Piero Antinori. But at the beginning, we were more merchants of wine, because who was really producing the wines were the priests in the countryside, like in the Chianti Classico. And I always say they were producing the wine, drinking the wine, and whatever remained, that in certain cases wasn't a lot, we were selling in the city of Florence. And I always say this little story, which I think it's very nice, especially for people who will come to Florence, who have been to Florence, that the Palazzo Antinori, where we had our headquarters, we still have, and where we have lived and being raised as 3 sisters. Also where we have our Cantinetta Antinori, which is in the center of Florence, our restaurant. One of the sides of the palazzo, which is a 1500 palazzo, Renaissance period palazzo, is on an alley, and there you find these little windows, finestrelle, and that was, and you can find many to our, if you go around Florence, the city of Florence, especially in the center, and that was the way to sell wine from the interior of the homes of the merchants of wine, like us in our case, to the people who were were going were walking on the alley, and in that way they could have a glass of wine, a fiasco, a flask of wine, and then continue their journey. So in a way, a very direct to consumer way to sell wine also in the 1600s or 1700s. So that was the way. And then after a few centuries, we started to produce wine ourselves in the Chianti Classico, and then obviously to sell it all around the world.
Well, it sounds like in the 14th, 15th century, being a monk was a pretty good profession. You got to get all the wine first and foremost. I guess that's why religion had so much power. You got the wine.
You know that if you go to our cellar, we have a winery called Badia Passignano, and we produce a wine called Badia Passignano, which is one of my favorites. It's 100% Sangiovese. And the Abbey of Badia Passignano, which is an abbey of the year 1000. It's an incredible place in the Chianti Classico. Has been always built and owned by the Vallombrosan monks, which have been also an order that has always been focusing on hunting, producing wine and agriculture. And so the fun thing is that from there, if you go to the cellars, or where we have all our, where we age all our Badia Passignano, the final part you have at the end, sometimes you see it, sometimes you have some stairs that go directly to their kitchen. So the kitchen has a direct, I would say, way to go directly to the cellars. And so that, is what has been done in the past. So this is another example of direct use of the cellars.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, that's my most important move, from the cellar to the kitchen.
Exactly.
Still important today. So you have 9 estates in Tuscany. You mentioned the Badia Passignano, and 6 more throughout Italy, 7 properties, Napa, Washington, Chile, Hungary, Malta, and even Romania. I mean, that's amazing. Are you guys, are you still looking to do more, or do you finally have enough?
But, I would say no, because we like to focus a lot on what we have. And especially in the last years, we are focusing a lot on the Chianti Classico, which is really, we started from there. So we want to go again back there in the area. And we also in the area, we have purchased a few properties in different sub areas of the Chianti Classico. Said this, the other, especially the beautiful partnerships that we have abroad, my personal experience with my father, because I've been traveling with him a lot, and we, in the occasions where these joint ventures happened, these collaborations, and it's really because my father always fell in love with these beautiful wine areas all over the world, and so we had the great opportunity to find great partners to collaborate together. And for us, it's important because we try to bring our know-how, but we try especially to learn what is happening abroad. And we are not typical Florentines on that aspect, especially the Florentines of the last few centuries, because Florentines have always been focusing on what they were producing in their wine area, for example. Instead, we have been always very curious and always looked ahead. And so my father was the one that through experimentation and innovation started certainly different wines, because he was inspired by trips that he has done, wines that he has tasted that weren't only the local ones. And certainly Napa Valley was the first experience that, one of the important experiences of his life, because he went to Napa in the beginning of the 1980s, and he fell in love with Napa Valley. And we acquired a property there called Antica, which is the short name for Antinori, California, and also Antico in Italian. Oh, and I would say that that is one of our most beautiful properties that we own. But we really like to transmit our values and our know-how in those wines to try to, to do a blend of old world and new world. And it's what I think everyone should try to do, in the sense, this blend of experiences, to try to produce wines that are different from many others and unique.
Well, that's great to hear. And it's also great to hear you're focusing on Chianti Classico, because personally, I love Chianti. I drank a lot of Chianti growing up. I just think they're, I think what happened is it became so commercialized, it became very popular. And then, with the straw baskets and stuff, and, and then, but people, a lot of people don't realize how great Chianti can be. I mean, there's so many great Chiantis. I mean, to me, it's still, I know Brunello is supposed to be like the great expression of Sangiovese, but a lot of the times I prefer a great Chianti.
Sangiovese is one of the most challenging grape varieties, in my opinion, because it's a variety that gives the best results at the end in Tuscany. Many other parts of the world too, but for many reasons, Tuscany and Sangiovese have a great liaison, I would say, and. Very challenging. Sangiovese is a grape variety that is very versatile, can produce wines that are entry-level, pleasant, fresh wines, but also extremely structured wines. And also in winemaking and viticulture, it's a very challenging grape variety.
What makes it so challenging? What are some of the characteristics?
The Sangiovese can be very, as a wine, can be very closed and very tannic. So you have to work a lot on the clones of Sangiovese, especially when, for example, in our Badia Passignano, we produce 100% Sangiovese. So it's very challenging, because historically, Sangiovese has always been blended with other grape varieties that were the indigenous ones of Chianti Classico. Sometimes also at the time, also white grape varieties, because they found them in the vineyard, and they put everything together. So Trebbiano's white, Malvasia, or if not, Canaiolo, for example, you know, as another red grape variety, because to a little bit soften the tannins of the Sangiovese. So nowadays, certainly it's challenging to produce 100% Sangiovese as we do. And I think also to go back to the roots of the Chianti Classico, of Sangiovese, also very classic Sangioveses and classic Chianti Classico is very important, because we had the period, and we still have, of the Tignanello, of the Solaya, of the Super Tuscans, and many others, because nowadays it's a category. But I don't know, we are in a period now that we want to even go back to the Chianti Classico and to concentrate on the Chianti Classico and to show the different expressions of Sangiovese in different sub areas of the Chianti Classico.
I wish I had some Chianti Classico here. Lily, you didn't hook me up with the Chianti, but I'll get some soon enough. But we do have some nice red wines here, right, Lily? So why don't you lead us into the world of Bulgari?
So the second wine we have today is the 2017 Guado al Tasso, which is from Bulgari, and it's one of the great Bs that John and I have been talking about with certain winemakers this week, in addition to Brunello and Barolo and Barbaresco and all of that. But Bulgari wasn't really recognized until the 1990s as a true region. And my question is, we'll start with the terroir of Bulgari that makes it so special, and the rocky soil deposits in Bulgari known as, I may pronounce it wrong, but Scheletro. And I was curious what you think the effect that has on the wines, and particularly the wine that John's having today.
Certainly the terroir of Bulgari is extremely important, fundamental. Also, we are talking about a winery in an area that are really close to the sea, which in parts, there are many sandy soils, not in the part where we cultivate, we grow the grapes for Guado al Tasso, for all the other wines of the property. But you can taste from the wines when you taste them that there's a little bit of there's a little bit of saltiness, of sapidity in it. Mm-hmm. And that's incredible. It's something that is unique, especially I would say in Italian wines, the sapidity. And it what really makes the wines of Bulgari in a way recognizable for this uniqueness of the saltiness. And the property, we have been very lucky because the property goes back many generations. It was the property of the Della Gherardesca family. Della Gherardesca, the last generation were two sisters, Carlotta and Clarice. Clarice married Mario Incisa della Rocchetta, who was the founder of Sassicaia, and Carlotta, my grandmother, instead married Niccolò Antinori. So we inherited this land in Bolgheri, and which nowadays is extremely precious, but at the time, you know, it wasn't considered like that. And we produced also in the area, we tried to produce some, we're talking about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, also some rosés from there, trying, you know, a little bit of experience from Sangiovese, but the results weren't good. And instead, in the mid-1980s, we started to focus on grape varieties that were more Cabernet and Merlot, and also Vermentino as a white grape variety, which is instead very indigenous. And we saw the great results, and not only us, obviously, Sassicaia, Ornellaia, all the other great producers in the area, of the great results of these grape varieties. So also if in Antinori, generally, we like to focus on indigenous grape varieties, or if not in blends, like for the Chervaro, for example, with indigenous and international grape varieties. In this case, we decided that the Cabernet and the Merlot were extremely important. And the first vintage of Guado al Tasso was 1990. Okay. And it was a blend of Cabernet Merlot. And then we added a little bit of Syrah throughout the years. And then we decided 10 years ago to focus mostly on Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc, a little bit of Merlot, and an addition of Petit Verdot. So it has slightly changed the blend, but I have to say that since the 2000s, it has been started to become a really interesting wines that can age extremely well, and has a lot of character. I repeat this thing of this aspect of the character because it's very important, because Italian wines in general have a lot of character because the grape varieties produced and grown in Italy are grape varieties, most of them that are unique and also are very interesting indigenous grape varieties. So we have to maintain them. We have to focus also on those, or as I said, on blends, or in this case, there's international grape varieties, but they are international in a way, but they're local at this point because we grow them in Bulgari since many years, and we are not the only ones. So.
It's funny that you know, everybody talks about super Tuscans, but a lot of the most famous super Tuscans are really super Bulgaris. Yes. I mean, it's kind of it's really it's a whole different climate and microclimate. And what does the word super Tuscan mean to you? Do you like the word, or do you think it's kind of becoming outdated, or what are your thoughts?
I think that you have two views of super Tuscans. The super Tuscan has Sassicaia, which is an incredible wine. That is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. So an international grape variety brought in a way to Italy and to Bolgheri. Or instead, super Tuscan, which is Tignanello was probably the first one of this other category, which is a blend of indigenous grape variety and international grape variety. And for that reason, especially for the Tignanello, couldn't be called at the time Chianti Classico DOCG, so it was in a way downgraded as table wine. So the super Tuscan for me means that it's a wine from super top, but from all over Tuscany because it's an IGT, a table wine. Which is not in our case because our comes from the vineyard of Tignanello in the heart of the Chianti Classico. But so I believe it more as a blend, but obviously it's a category. Nowadays it's really a category, and it's a category that has it's important that it's a category. We probably with our cousins, Sassicaia and a few others were the founders of this category, but nowadays there are great wines produced from many other producers from Tuscany.
Now, of course, Tignanello, another one of my favorite wines that I've ordered dozens of times in restaurants in New York City. Just always, you know, you can always, when you're at an Italian restaurant, you know, and you're with family or just meeting up with an old friend, it's just always a great wine. You know, you can always order and just, you know, have a great bottle of wine. So was it your father who decided to make it? 71 was the first vintage. That's my vintage, actually. And I've had 71 Tignanello, which was fantastic. I had a couple of years ago. Still drinking beautifully. We even have some tonight for sale, which we're excited about. But what was the decision? Like, why? You know, where did the idea come from? Did he ever share the story with you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a beautiful story because my father, as I was mentioning at the beginning, traveled a lot in the 1960s. He had this open mentality and curiosity to go also abroad and outside our Chianti Classico. And he went to France. He saw the great results in Bordeaux of Cabernet, and he decided to bring back the Cabernet to the Chianti Classico, and to start to really experiment on the Cabernet grape variety. And the 1971 was the first vintage of Tignanello. 1975 was the first vintage as a blend of Sangiovese and Cabernet. 80% Sangiovese and 20% Cabernet. But as I mentioned before, by law, you could, at the time it was admitted only 15% of other grape varieties that weren't Sangiovese. And so the wine couldn't be called Chianti Classico DOCG, which was the highest quality, you know, considered. Right. And, but he believed that he wanted to produce a wine that was different and of high quality. And so it was very controversial because it was 3 times more expensive than a normal Chianti Classico. It was a small production, and in Italy, really nobody understood it at the time in the 1970s when he launched it. And so instead he came to the US, and the Americans appreciated the wine and called it Super Tuscan. And I think it was important for us, but especially for the image of Italian high quality red wines in Italy and especially abroad. And it became a category that is famous, has been almost famous worldwide almost immediately. And it was really the true renaissance for Italian high quality red wines.
Yeah.
I would say the turning point, because Italy was known in the 50s to be more known to be a big producer of quantity more than quality. Instead, that was the turning point that put Italy back on the wine high quality area of the world.
Was it really, was it accepted at first? So there was a lot of people that were like, oh my God, I mean, especially locally, I bet other winemakers were.
It wasn't understood at the beginning, wasn't understood at all. And after a few years, you know, to the great trips also to the US, it was started to be known worldwide.
Right. So back to Guado al Tasso, 2017, it was a very warm vintage, right? And you could kind of get that concentration and that richness and sweetness in 17. Talk to us a little bit about 2017 and what's the blend generally for the Guado al Tasso on average?
The blend generally it's more or less 60% Cabernet Sauvignon, then depends 10-15% of Cabernet Franc, and Merlot other 10-15%, and then a small percentage of Petit Verdot. We're talking sometimes about 4%, so it's very little. We reintroduced the Cabernet Franc, which we believe is a very interesting grape variety. And in fact, for that reason, we also, after a few years and in certain vintages, we produce a wine called Matarocchio, which is 100% Cabernet Franc, which is a really special wine also for us. So that was the beginning of in a way, the experimentation on Cabernet Franc that we did. And 17 was a very good vintage, as 2007, also 17 after 10 years was a really good vintage. I think one of the best ones in the last years. Very warm, but also very equilibrated, and produces wines that are studied. You can feel that alcohol, that potential, but also you can eventually taste also a little bit of freshness to the wine too. And always that sapidity, that saltiness that in the Guado al Tasso.
I love that descriptor, the saltiness. I mean, I taste it right away. I mean, when you say it, I'm like, wow, that's what it is, the saltiness.
The sea breeze exactly immediately from the sea. Yeah.
Right. It carries the salt from the ocean. That makes sense, actually. Interesting. And yeah, I mean, this wine, even though, it's young, it is young, I feel. What do you think the ideal time to drink a typical Guado al Tasso or this vintage of Guado al Tasso?
I think the ideal probably it's after 8-10 years. But these are wines that we have experienced. The first vintage was 1990, but I think that, we have many years of experience, but never enough to say how much it will really age. But I'm sure that if we go back and taste the 1990 of Guado al Tasso, it's very interesting. So, and it's a wine that can age 20, 30, 40 years, or 50, even more. So they're wines that will have a very interesting evolution.
Okay, we have another 2017 here, right? The wine that really doesn't need any introduction, but Lily will try to give one nonetheless.
Well, we've started talking about it already. So John has the 2017 Solaya, and to me, my biggest question is, you talk about the salinity of Bulgari and the salinity of the Guado al Tasso. What do you think is the signature of the Solaya?
That sun, Solaya comes from sun. No, but sun and the hills of the Chianti Classico, the two together make a great combination. And really that the stones of the Galestro and the Alberese that you find in the terroir of the Chianti Classico, especially in that area of the winery of Tignanello. And for that reason, we have worked a lot also on these rocks, which are very important for us, and helped us a lot in controlling the period of the harvest because of the and also in the longevity of the harvest, which is very important for us because the harvest, especially for the Sangiovese, can be very fast and it has to be immediate in a way. So obviously, if you can make it longer, this is much easier also for us to give the best results for the wine. The Solaya vineyard is a small vineyard of 10 hectares in the heart of the Chianti Classico in the winery of Tignanello, in the state of Tignanello. And the vineyard is adjacent to the vineyard of Tignanello. Solaya has been an experiment, started as an experiment because we saw the great results of the Cabernet that in 1978 that we decided to vinify separately. And for that reason, after that, after a few years, we decided to produce a wine that was exactly the opposite of Tignanello. So in the blend, it's 80% of Cabernet and 20% of Sangiovese. So in the Cabernet, there's part of mostly is Cabernet Sauvignon and a small part of Cabernet Franc. Very interesting. With the first vintage was 1978, and Solaya became extremely famous in 1997 because he became the first, was rated the first wine of the world by Wine Spectator. But also there, I think it was important for us, obviously, but not only, because it was very important for the image of Italian high-quality red wines. And the Solaya is a wine that has this personality, which is very, very predominant, but also is an extremely elegant wine. And it's what we try to, we look up to this point. It's very important for us when we produce our wines to produce elegant wines, which is the most challenging thing. I always say that, when they ask me how you describe elegant in a wine, and I say it's like a woman. When they say it's very elegant, but she's really undescribable in the sense that it's something that it comes very naturally, and it's what we really try to look in all our wines to produce, but especially in a wine like Solaya, obviously.
You really do get that elegance, and yeah, I'm glad you said the like a woman thing. I don't think I can say that anymore in today's times, but you could say it at least. But I mean, so even though you have that richness of the 2017 vintage, I mean, it still is this elegance. It's still there. It's so true. And this is a unique Solaya, right? You added Sangiovese. Is this the first time you added Sangiovese back into the mix with Solaya, or have you done it before?
No. Solaya has always been a blend of Cabernet Sangiovese, not the first years, like in the 1978 was the first vintage, and then a few years later we added Sangiovese. And only one vintage in 2002, which was a very difficult vintage for the Sangiovese, we produced the Solaya Nata Diversa, which was 100% Cabernet. Only one. And then at the beginning
it was, and then and then after a few years you added it.
Solaya is really Cabernet Sauvignon, small percentage of Cabernet Franc, and Sangiovese. Right.
And what do you think is the Solaya? I mean, what are some of the favorite vintages of yours over the years? That have really been dear to your heart?
I think that obviously 97, but I would say that Solaya 98 in a way could be more interesting than 97 because it's always the vintage after the most famous one, and it's more a shadow. But instead, 98 has been extremely interesting, great vintage. Certainly, skipping a few years. 2006 and 2007 have been great vintages, as 2017. But we have been very lucky in the last years. I have to say, the vintages have been very, very interesting and good vintages.
Interesting. Well, I do have a special wine with me to also add to taste because we have a great consignment. We have some special, I don't know if you saw the catalog. I should show it to you. We're Send it to you. Lily's going to make sure you have it. We have this beautiful Viva Italia. That's Giacosa on the cover, but of course we have, you know, some great lots and the spread from you guys, and we have the super lot of Guado al Tasso and the experience to go to Guado al Tasso and the vertical of Matrocchio, and also we have some great Solaya direct from your cellars, and then the big grand finale, your own barrel of 2020 Tignanello, which is super exciting. A barrel of Tignanello is available tonight for some lucky buyer. So we're excited about that. So of course I had to break out, you know, Tignanello. I was like, where's the Tignanello? It's all sold out in the New York market, so we couldn't get any. I mean, the wine is just too popular. But I have, let's see, 1985.
Ah, good vintage. Yeah,
I'm
good
going
vintage.
to drink something. I'm probably going to drink.
Lucky you that you can drink it.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to need a nap soon with all these wines I'm drinking for lunch here. But I'll have some. I'll probably save some for tonight, of course, because we're going to do the big auction tonight and stuff. So, Tignanello, talk to us a little bit again about Tignanello and you know, about kind of when you think the great window to drink, or you know, your personal experience with the wine.
Tignanello's, if you ask separately as three sisters, which is our favorite wine, is we always answer, all of us, Tignanello, because it's the example of tradition and innovation in our family. So the tradition, obviously, of the, you know, the history, because we are talking about Chianti Classico, but also extremely extremely innovative part, especially if you know, nowadays it's more obvious, but if you go back to the 1970s, 1960s, when this wine was created, it's extremely innovative. So you have to always go back to those years. Also for the Cervaro, 1985. Nowadays, everything is more obvious, but at the time it wasn't at all. And so it's the example for the family of curiosity, innovation, experimentation, looking ahead, and also really starting a new category of wines, all focused on the obsession of quality. So we downgraded our wines at the time, like the Tignanello, because we were obsessed for quality. My father wanted to produce a better wine, regardless of all the laws at the time for the Chianti Classico, the OCG. So I would say this was a little bit of a revolution probably at the time. And so this really represents us. And it's a wine that, you know, in a way, it's a very interesting also in that category, value for money wine, because it's a wine that is obviously not affordable for everybody, but you could have you know, a bottle of Tignanello also at lunch for a quick lunch, in the sense that it's nothing of too it's complex, but on the other side is affordable, and so it's a wine that is known all over the world also for this reason, because it's approachable.
Yeah, I mean, for a fine wine, it's very reasonable. I mean, you know, in a restaurant, you can get it for maybe, you know, 200 for a bottle, which for a serious world-class fine wine is an unbelievable price. I mean, it's really, I mean, that's why I've always loved it. It's always like you don't have to break the bank, but you know you're getting a great wine without having to, you know, call your banker and make sure you can buy it, you know? So that's why I love it so much, you know?
And also it's very important, the consistency, as we were mentioning at the beginning. So you know that if we release the wine, it means that there's that consistency. There's the you know, the brand of the family of Antinori that believes in this wine and will never release a wine that is not the quality that we are aiming for.
So and have there been some vintages of Tignanello you did not make? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, like for example, 2002. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, in 2002 we haven't produced the majority of our cru wines, our top wines. And another thing of Tignanello, which was very innovative at the time, was that we aged the wines in small barrels, in barriques, that at the time instead the oak big barrels were used. So it was very controversial. Everything was certainly there was interest, and also if it wasn't really accepted in the area in Tuscany, but it was accepted abroad, and then it became also famous all over the world. So we believe that it really represents us, and also because it's produced in the Chianti Classico. Nowadays, we could call it name it as a Chianti Classico wine, because nowadays the percentages arrived to 20% of other grape varieties that are admitted. But we believe that Tignanello is Tignanello, and that it's known to be like that.
It's too late for that. Too late for that. Well, it's drinking beautifully. It's wine aged. I had a 71, which was lights out, fantastic. And that was within the last 2 or 3 years I had it. I'm always excited to try a new 71, and you never see that. Rarely see.
Oh, it's very difficult. I've tasted only a few times in my life, so
right.
you've been lucky.
Right. Well, you know, if you stay up late tonight, you can buy another 6 bottles of 71 if you need to fill your cellar up. Come see the auction.
I think we should, probably.
Well, listen, Alessia, it was so great to have you. Really an honor to host you and to share some wines with you. Thank you for the support of our first Viva Italia. It's tonight, everybody. We look forward to seeing you in person in New York, hopefully, and also in Tuscany or Bulgari. We have 2 great experience lots where the winners will be visiting you soon in Bulgari or
because it's beautiful, and we will give you the best experience. Really, it's very unique. Come to visit us.
Well,
and
thank you so much, Alessia.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you, Lily, and thank you for all of you that are listening to this nice seminar. And unfortunately, I don't know, I'm not tasting tonight, but at least John is tasting, and maybe you'll taste the wine soon.
Yeah, I'll cover you on the tasting part. I'll do your share.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.